Trucker Dump, episode 150. Well, there is no main topic today, but we've got enough news, listener feedback, and other stuff to choke a hippo. Provided a hippo would try to eat stuff like that, I guess. Anywho, we'll be covering truck recalls and a lot of stuff about truck brakes, myths about truck inspections, truck parking, new hours of service clarifications, and we'll learn about winter fuel additives. Good news on the economy and trucker pay is always good, right? But dash cams, drug testing, delayed driver training guidelines, and drivers getting sued, not so much. Listener feedback covers trucking schools, elogs, smart trailers, autonomous trucking, and of course, tailgating truckers. We've even got a bit of a different trucker grub segment this time around. This episode of Trucker Dump is sponsored by Volvo Trucks and Pilot Flying J.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com, resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Hey, trucker dumpers, how's it going out there? I hope everyone's staying out of the snow and all this crazy hurricane stuff. I have not been in any of this stuff yet, so knock on wood. But, of course, I know what you're really thinking about right now, and that's not weather. That is the U.S. presidential election, and what a mess it is. At the time of this recording, the voting is done. I don't even know if all of the ballots are in yet. Apparently, some of the states allowed postmark up to the last days, and others didn't, so there is confusion in counting. There is different websites and different news media outlets that are saying so-and-so is in the lead. They're even going as far as, like Fox might say that, this state is a definite, and CNN says something different. It's not definite yet. So nobody seems to know what's going on. Plus, there's lawsuits going on. There's going to be recounts. It's going to be a freaking nightmare. So just hang on to your hat. Stay cool. Nobody riot. Nobody freak out. Life's going to go on as we know it, no matter who wins this thing. So let's just, I won't say as we know it. Things could get different. But anyway, not going to get into that. Like I said, this is not a political podcast. But I just wanted to mention this because, I didn't want you to think I just out of sight, out of mind. Definitely not out of sight, out of mind. What a mess. Anywho. For those of you new to the show, my name is Todd McCann. I am a 23-year truck driver. I'm a blogger, and I am the author of 2 trucking ebooks. One is called How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job, and the other is, get ready for this, longest title ever, Trucking Life, an entertaining yet informative guide to becoming and being a truck driver. Wow, had to take a breath after that one. You can find more information about both these books and everything else I do at abouttruckdriving.com. And by the way, that 50% off buy one, get one free book is still going on over there, only on the website. There'll be a link in the show notes, obviously. So, hey, I know it sounds like a going out of business thing, but I'm going to be taking that limited offer down before too long. I don't have an exact date yet, but sales have started to slack off a little bit on that, so probably going to go back to the normal price. So if you want that, go ahead and jump in on that pretty darn quick. So hey, if you paid attention to the opening blurb where I say everything's going to happen in the podcast, you will note that there is no topic of this podcast. It's all just going to be news. And we're going to have Trucker Grub and, you heard everything's going to be in it, some listener feedback. So I'm guessing this may be a shorter episode, but then again, hey, how many times have I said that before? And it turns into a mega episode. But anyway, the reason behind that is I have been sick for 2 weeks. Now, don't worry about this. This is not COVID. At least I don't think it is. But hey, according to a Forbes article that I read recently, there is at least a 0.12% chance that a guy my age might be dead by the next podcast. So just so you know. In case I don't release another podcast, it's been nice knowing you. Anyway, so if you hear some weird clicking or something, or sounds like my mouth is full of peanut butter, I may just have a cough drop in my mouth. Anyway, let's get on with, I wanted to mention one other thing. What's up? You remember when I did that in the last episode? Well, boy, that really got a lot more response than I thought it was going to, especially in the Slack group. Gwen, who goes by the name of Furiosa over there, she wrote, "You did not just do the 1999 What's Up." And of course, I did. Other people, Ken and Brian, Travis, Jellison, Kool-Aid, that's Trevor, Dunkel, they all jumped in on this, had some input on this. I had no idea that there was so much hatred for that Budweiser commercial. But I just found it funny because I love the commercial. Like I said, the Evil Overlord and I laugh our butts off every time we see it. So anyway, sorry if you hated it, but hey, what's up? All right. One more thing before we get to the news. I received an offer from Garmin to do a review of their diesel OTR 1000. That's the 10-inch model. And I have received that. I've been working on that for about a week. I'm going to try to do both the podcast version and a short YouTube video. So that'll be something new for me. So no idea how long I'm going to have this, how long I'm going to be able to review it. But that was very nice of Garmin to send that to me. And I'll let you know when that comes out. Probably be the full topic of a podcast in the future. All right, let's say we get started with the news before I hack up a lung and, spit a loogie all over the microphone, because this foam cover on my microphone, that would be real hard to get that out of there. And I'm pretty sure the Evil Overlord wouldn't wash it for me. That'd be all on me. All right, on with the news. All right, let's start off with a couple of recalls right off the bat. The first one I found on freightwaves.com. Link in the show notes, of course, and I'm going to say that a million times, so let me explain what that is. You can go to abouttruckdriving.com, search for Trucker Dump 150 or TD150, and all the show notes will be there. Or you can look in your podcast app if you're using one of those. Swipe left, swipe right, up or down, whatever, to get to the show notes, and there should be clickable links in there to everything I'm going to mention in this episode. And another way to get that is if you would like to subscribe to my, I guess I call it a newsletter, but it's not really. I mean, all I do is send out the notices of new episodes, and I do include all the show notes in there too. So if you'd like to just have that in an email every time a new episode comes up, and of course you will know immediately when an episode does come up. But anyway, again, like I said, found this on freightwaves.com. Okay, according to this article, apparently Daimler is recalling a little over 142,000 Freightliner Cascadias for faulty brake lights. Now, this is their second major recall on the Cascadia in the last 3 months. If you remember earlier, they had an anti-lock brake component that was corroding, and it could cause the trucks to pull to one side or the other. Well, this one is about the intensity of the brake lights. And there is apparently about 5% of the recalled vehicles, they expect about 5% of them are actually going to have this problem. What happens is the brake lights the intensity of them doesn't change. So when you put your foot on the brake, it just, doesn't make them any brighter, which they say could increase the risk of a crash. You think? They're going to have more details on November the 16th. This is going to be coming out. Dealers and customers are going to know more about this. There are over 128,000 trucks sold in the U.S. and over 13,000 sold in Canada. Again, these are Cascadias. They don't list years or anything like that. So just keep your head up on this if you are driving a Cascadia. And I'm sure they're going to get this sorted out pretty quick. Now, the second recall I found was on overdriveonline.com. Link in the show notes. This one is Kenworth. They got about 1,400 trucks that could have a brake issue. This is the T680 tractors, and they're saying it's a brake issue. These are 2016 to 2021 T680s. It's ones with a particular brake system on them, so I'm not going to go into all the gory details on this, but suffice it to say that they put the wrong analog brake system valve on it, and basically it could increase the stopping distance of the truck. So PACCAR, who owns Kenworth and Peterbilt, they'll be notifying the owners, and dealers will replace this part for free, obviously. There's a link in the show notes if you want to get more information on this recall. All right, now considering those last 2 recalls, this next story should not surprise you. Again, overdriveonline.com. Brake Safety Week sidelined more than 5,000 trucks, actually more than 5,100. You remember what was going on here. They were checking brakes. This was the safety blitz. This was held on August 23rd to 29th. Apparently, they removed over 5,100 trucks from the road with out-of-service violations. That's about 12% of the 43,000 trucks that they inspected. So, what they were really focused on this year was chafing in the hoses, caused by, dragging the catwalk or, just rubbing up against each other for too long. They said they had 5 different levels of chafing. Okay. Wonder how they considered that. 2 of those levels were considered out of service. And like I said, they shut down about 5,100 of those. So, hey, if you escaped that, you should probably still go check your brake lines and make sure they aren't being all chafed up. So anyway, just a little bit of follow up there on the Brake Safety Week that I reported on a couple episodes ago. Hey, since we just talked about brake inspections, let's bust some myths about inspection regulations. This is one of those awesome trucking law articles from overdriveonline.com. Now, there are 6 myths in here that Paul Taylor is going to bust. He works for the Truckers Justice Center, which is truckersjusticecenter.com. I also have a phone number. I'll repeat that at the end of this little segment here. And there, of course, there'll be a link in the show notes directly to Paul if you have any questions about this stuff. Sure, he'd be happy to help. If he wasn't, he shouldn't put his email and phone number in here. So anyway, the first myth is that a driver must prepare a pre-trip inspection report before he drives the truck. Okay, now, it's important to note that a carrier might require this, but this is not a federal regulation. Now again, this is for pre-trip. The federal regulations in 396.11 actually talk more about post-trip reports. And it says that a driver is required to prepare a written report at the completion of each day's work on each vehicle that the driver operates. Now on there you have to list parts and accessories that are not working or bad, like tires, windshield wipers, all that stuff that you see on your DVIR. However, it says if there are no defects, no report is required. Now, I know a lot of companies require this anyway, or at least you to sign off on your elog something about everything being okay. I would do that anyway, even though it's not required if nothing's wrong with it, because at least if you turn it in and say, hey, it's okay, then nobody can come back on you later and say, why'd you leave this trailer with a flat tire or something like that? And you don't want that. Now, here's something I didn't know about this particular rule is one exception to the post-trip report requirement is intermodal equipment. That's provided by an intermodal equipment provider. So, like some of these rail cars and stuff like that, they got those frames you stick up on the, put the container on the rail, on the frame, and then the truck frame, I should say, trailer frame, and then put that up on the train. So I guess those, because they're so junky, I don't know. I guess you're not required to do that. I don't really know why that is. But anyway, that is a myth busted. Now, here's one closely related. Myth number 2 is a driver must perform a pre-trip inspection. Technically, this is not true. Apparently, section 392.7 simply requires a driver to be satisfied that certain parts and accessories identified in the regulation are in good working order before driving. And in section 396.13, it requires that a driver be satisfied any vehicle he operates is safe to drive. Now, the FMCSA also says, oh, by the way, that's the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration for you newbies. They actually say that a driver can rely on a co-driver's inspection or a safety lane inspection for this to count as a pre-trip. So that's cool too. Good to know that if you wake up at your yard, a terminal, and you have to go through an inspection bay or something like that, that can actually count for it. You don't have to show an additional time or whatever. And speaking of time, that is the number 3 myth. This myth says that a driver must record at least 15 minutes on his log for a pre-trip inspection. This is not true. According to section 395.8, it actually requires all time recorded on a log to be accurate. So, for instance, if your company says you have to log 15 minutes as a pre-trip or a post-trip or both, that's not actually true. But especially if you only log, say it only actually took you 5 minutes to do a walk around, but you log 15 minutes, well, that's technically falsifying a log, right? That's a felony. But, well, anyway, your company's going to do what they do, and you're pretty much just going to follow their rules. If they say you need to log 15 minutes, you need to log 15 minutes, I guess. But anyway, it is important to know, though, like I say, that there is no particular length of time required by law. This is pretty much just a carrier thing. Again, you just have to be satisfied as the trucker that the truck and trailer are in good condition and you're willing to take it down the road. Now, there's another myth here related to time, and that is that a carrier may not limit the amount of time a driver may take to perform a vehicle inspection. That is not technically true. An employer can impose reasonable inspection methods and reasonable time limits on the inspection. So, just because it takes you an hour to do a pre-trip inspection, your company may not allow you to log an entire hour. They may only want you to log 15 minutes, so you're not wasting your day away. I don't honestly know, can't think of a scenario why any trucker would want to log more time than they're actually doing it. But it does seem weird that, you're actually not logging it as you do it, but they're saying that's perfectly fine, which, anyway, that's weird. Aren't most of the hours of service stuff and these rules weird? So anyway, we got two more myths here. The first, and quite honestly, I'd never heard this myth. Apparently, there's a rumor going around, and has been for a long time, that a violation-free level 1 roadside inspection is a substitute for an annual inspection. Now, apparently, that is false. According to section 396.17, it says that it requires a carrier to perform a detailed periodic inspections. So, just getting pulled over on the side of the road and inspected by a trooper or a DOT officer does not count. Now, some states will allow it if that particular officer who's giving you the inspection, or maybe you've been pulled around to an inspection bay at a chicken coop or something like that. Chicken coop is a weigh station for any of you newbies. If you go back there and that person is qualified, they might do the full inspection on you and then give you a sticker or something like that. And that is legal, but that's only in certain states. So the important thing to note here is that don't expect that it works, to get an inspection like that. And then it just counts as your yearly inspection. Not necessarily the case. And that is the subject of the last myth here, that an annual DOT inspection must be performed not less frequently than annually. Technically, that's not true, because the rule just says that the annual inspection must be performed at least once during the preceding 12 months. So if you go back and do the math on that, that actually means say you got it done on November 1st and it's good until November 31st because it was performed within the preceding 12 months. So technically you can go about 13 months, but hey, let's not push it, shall we? For all of the details on this one, there's more details that I left out, and you'll want to go over here to overdriveonline.com, click a link in the show notes. And again, if you want to reach out to Paul O. Taylor at the truckerjusticecenter.com, or, ready, got a pencil, pen, whatever, good memory. His phone number is 855-943-3518. Again, that link will be in the show notes. Man, I love those trucking law articles. They are so helpful. I hope Overdrive Online keeps doing these. All right, this next story comes from Transport Topics. That's ttnews.com. Link in the show notes. This one falls under the category of no one gives a rip and it's not going to affect your life whatsoever. But hey, maybe you can be like the Cliff Clavin, in a group and say, it's a little known fact that Navistar is owned by Triton, who is owned by Volkswagen. For those of you who don't know who Cliff Clavin is, well, I'm sorry. Look it up on YouTube. All right. Apparently, like I said, it doesn't really matter. It's not going to affect you at all. But Volkswagen is the main people behind Traton. I don't know if I'm even saying that right, but they're going to buy Navistar out for $3.7 billion. Well, anyway, good to know that little fact, I guess. Lots of financial stuff in this article that I don't care about, and I doubt you do either. But if you do, check out the link in the show notes. Hey, with the colder weather coming on, let's shift our focus a little bit. Overdriveonline.com is where I found this. Question and answer. Should I use diesel fuel additives in the winter? Well, this is a highly debated question, isn't it? You know, if for nothing else, you are going to want to go and check out the photo that is a part of this article. You know, I had never seen a clogged fuel filter before. Clogged from, freezing, gelling fuel. But, hey, if you're not going to go over there, I can describe it. It's pretty much what this microphone would look like if I coughed a giant cough loogie all over it. I mean, it is some slimy looking stuff. I'd never seen that before. Very interesting. Check that out. Link in the show notes. Anyway, let's address some of those questions. First, how can you tell if your fuel is starting to gel at all? They say that there will be hard starts. It'll be harder to start. You'll have a loss of power, and you're probably going to have some decreased fuel efficiency, which, if you're a company driver, you're probably not even looking at the fuel efficiency, so that probably won't help you much. So exactly what is happening here? Time to get all sciencey and stuff. According to this article, we all know that diesel is, well, not all of us, new people don't, but diesel number 2, he said number 2, which is the standard stuff everybody pumps on a regular basis, unless you're way up north somewhere and you see something that says winter blend. But in general, the standard is ultra low sulfur diesel, and that has paraffin wax in it. That paraffin wax is combustible, and if when the temperature gets low, those paraffins, it's a wax, so of course it gets stiffer and it coalesces and it gels. And you can tell because the fuel will start to get cloudy. Now, once that fuel gets thick enough, it's considered cold filter plug point. That's CFPP. Now, that's not the same as the cloud point, which I didn't know there was a difference. But the cloud point is when the fuel first gets cloudy. You can look down in your tank and you can see it cloudy. Apparently, it will get cloudy about 18 degrees before it hits the complete gelling point. Now, do keep in mind that, of course, there are fuel additives, antigel and stuff like that you can add to your fuel. Keep in mind that even some of those will make your fuel look, a little bit cloudy. So, if you've dumped some in there, don't forget you dump some in there and then you panic, thinking, oh, it's cloudy, I'm getting ready to freeze up, when, it's probably that you just dumped some antigel in there. So anyway, I mentioned those fuel additives. What do those actually do? Well, apparently all those little paraffin molecules that are in there, it basically just forms a little coating around each one of them so they don't bind together, so they can't stick together. How's that? Who knew you were going to get a little chemistry lesson today? That's about all I know about chemistry. And I only know that because I read it. So here's something to know about fuel. You old timers probably already know this, but anybody new might not. When you go to a fuel station, they will typically mix it for the temperature in the area. So, for instance, if you're down south, they're going to not put as much antigel kind of stuff in it, probably nothing at all. But, if you're pumping fuel up in North Dakota, they've probably added some antigel to the formula already. Or like I said earlier, a lot of times they'll just have a separate set of pumps that's called winter blend or number 1. And that is the stuff that you want to pump if it's getting really stinking cold. Now, how cold? Well, that's always point of contention, especially like with the companies I've driven for, some of them say don't add it at all because we have heated fuel tanks. Some of them say, add it at 20 degrees, or someone will just say, as long as you leave the truck running, it will keep the fuel warm. It just depends on your company and what their policies is, but make sure you know what that policy is before you go into it. Now, keep in mind, I have a friend mentioned him before on here, Kool-Aid, who had an incident. He was with a large carrier. Not going to name their name, but they specifically told him never add anti-gel. And it got really cold a couple of years ago, and guess what? He gelled up, and he was just, a mile and a half, something like that from his terminal. And he spent, I don't remember, many, many hours and was freezing to death, and probably 3 or 4 hours in his truck, before somebody finally came and got him back to the yard. So you don't want to be in that situation. Now, I'm not telling you to go against your company policy, but I might be telling you to, keep some anti-gel in your truck just in case. And they also have something called like a 911, it's usually called, which is, well, actually ungel fuel. After the fact, if it's already gelled, you can add some to the tank, but you're probably not going to be able to unclog that fuel filter just by trying to start it. You're going to have to probably crack open the fuel filter case and pour some down in there. Again, I am not a mechanic. So if you're going to do this, call somebody you know who actually knows what they're talking about. Don't take my advice on this seriously. I am a horrible mechanic. Don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So, all right, with that. So that basically covers it. There's some more stuff in this article. If you're interested in all of this stuff, head on over to the link in the show notes or over to overdriveonline.com. And basically just be ready for winter. Don't forget to drain those air tanks, because you build up moisture in there. You're going to get, that air lines are going to freeze in the trailer. It's going to cause all sorts of problems. You're going to, your brakes are going to freeze up, and that's always a pain in the butt to be laying under there in freezing cold temperatures, smacking it with a hammer, smacking those brake pads with a hammer. So, sorry about that. Let me correct before I start getting email. You don't want to smack the brake pads. You want to smack the hub or the disc around it, whatever. You want to smack the big metal part. Go and smack it on pads. They're going to bust, and you don't want that. So anyway, just smack that big metal ring on the inside of the wheel, and it will loosen it up. Hopefully. All right. There is a list of a whole bunch of different kind of winter additives in this link also. So go and check that out and just be prepared for it. And like I said before, if you are a company driver, know your company's policy on this so you don't get busted. But do what you got to do. Just saying. Hey, and since we're on the subject of winter driving, let me point you to an excellent resource for any of you new truckers out here, or heck, any of you old timers who need a refresher. Back in January of 2017, I did an interview in a podcast called Winter Truck Driving Tips from an Alaskan Truck Driver. This was TD150. I'll put a link in the show notes to this, obviously. And you really need to check this one out. We talked to Kevin Lowry, who lives in Alaska and has for many years. At the time, he was driving a fuel truck up there, but now he is actually a tow truck driver up there. Oh, did I say that, Kevin? I'm sorry I said that. He's actually a heavy recovery specialist. Yeah, he tows guys out of, people get in trouble out of there. He digs them out of the ditches and everything. So this guy really knows his stuff about driving in winter weather. So go and check this one out. It is a really long interview I had with Kevin, but it was a fun one, and it has a lot of good information, especially for you new truckers out there. Don't miss this one, seriously. Link in the show notes. That one, again, is called Trucker Dump 119, Winter Truck Driving Tips from an Alaskan Trucker. All right, let's switch it up to some more extensions. Ever since this COVID stuff started, we have been extending all kinds of exemptions for hours of service and all kinds of licensing and everything. Well, this is more of that. Found this one on overdriveonline.com. Apparently, the hazmat renewal waiver has been extended through December 31st, so the end of the year. Previously, it was set to expire on October 31st, and I guess there's just not enough DMVs open around the country yet to get people in and get their hazmat licenses. They're just giving you some more time on that, so that's good to know. Again, don't push it on this stuff. It takes a little while for you to get in there, sometimes restudy for the test if you're getting it. And then you've got to go through the whole hazmat process, which can take up to a couple of months. So you want to jump on this early, to get your fingerprints and, get your background check and all that stuff, and then get the test done and get it on your license in time. Just because they keep putting this off doesn't mean you need to put it off. Try to get this scheduled as soon as possible so you're not, if your company requires you to have hazmat like mine does, if I don't have it, I'm grounded. I'm sitting at home until I got it. And if I've forgotten to get it, like I said, could be a 2-month process where I'm sitting at home without any pay. Not cool. If COVID don't kill me, the evil overlord likely would for not bringing home pay for 2 months. Hey, let me jump in here a second to go ahead and tell you about our first sponsor, Volvo Trucks. You can learn more at volvotrucks.us or check out the link in the show notes, of course. Hey, today I want to remind you again of the awesomeness of the Volvo interiors in the VNL series. These bunks are designed with driver comfort in mind because they know if you don't get good rest, you suck as a driver. That's all there is to it. Now, the first thing you're going to notice when you step back in the bunk area of the new VNL is the mattress and how thick it is. And when you turn around and sit on this, your butt's going to smile. I'm just telling you, your butt's going to smile. That's all there is to it. It's really thick. It's really nice. But I got to admit, it's kind of weird. That's because it bends. Yes, that's because Volvo has the first reclining bunk in all of the industry. It's really easy to recline, so you can set it up so you can sit there and watch TV, eat, read, whatever you want to do. And what even makes that more handy is the handy dandy swivel desktop that folds out from the back wall. I mean, it is so freaking cool. No more using your Road Atlas as your TV tray. I mean, it works, but hey, who wants a big blob of chili right in the middle of Terre Haute, Indiana, right? A couple other cool features is that you can lock the doors from the back bunk. I mean, you're laying there in bed, you forget to lock the doors before you crash for the night. You just reach up, tap a button, click, you're locked and safe and secure. But perhaps one of my favorite things about the VNL series is the new slide down window coverings. No more Velcro that does not stick after a while. No more snaps to try to get lined up. Nope. These are airplane style. Just slide the window shade up, slide it down. That easy. No more futzing about. I mean, I'm serious, not messing around here. You've got to put your eyes on these videos to see how comfortable these sleeper berth areas look. So just head on over to volvotrucks.us or just go to the show notes and click on the links that'll take you to a couple of really cool videos that show off all these cool features of the new Volvo VNL interiors. And thanks to Volvo Trucks for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump. All right, let's get to some hours of service stuff. We got those new hours of service rules, and boy, I got to tell you, I am loving that new 30-minute rule. Holy moly, that thing's awesome. There have been a few times when I've actually had to just sit around twiddling my thumbs waiting for 30 minutes, but for the vast majority of the time, that 30 minutes is being taken care of by, fueling or a combination of fueling and doing a switch like a drop and hook or something. Whatever you're doing, maybe even just putting placards on your trailer or whatever, all that counts towards a 30-minute break now. And holy moly, is that awesome. But anyway, this article is on overdriveonline.com. It is called Answering Hours Questions, as some ELDs falsely flag errors when new rule options are used. Now, they call out here a couple of elog companies, for instance, the Keep Truckin' app and the Big Road logbook. Both of those are not logging this stuff correctly. And mainly what they're getting wrong is like if you don't do this 14-hour pause kind of a thing, like you can take a 2 or 3 hour break off duty or in the sleeper, and that can go towards extending your 14-hour day, however long you took off. And that's great, but apparently some of these logging systems are still logging it incorrectly and flagging you for a violation. So just know that you may be actually showing in violation, and you need to be able to explain that to an officer and show him on there what why it's not logging it correctly. Apparently, Keep Truckin' has addressed this issue, and they are working on it, try to get this fixed. But for all I know, by the time you're hearing this, it is fixed. So basically what they're suggesting is that if you are 100% certain that you logged a legal first half of a split sleeper berth, like a 2-hour break or a 3-hour break off duty or in the sleeper berth, and you're 100% positive that that is correct, but your log is telling you otherwise, your electronic log is telling you otherwise, you can go ahead and drive with that. Just know that, you're going to need to explain that to a DOT officer if he or she wants to know about this. Now, relating to these new rules, let's go over to Transport Topics, ttnews.com, and check out the link in the show notes. And this is something we have never seen before, at least not to my knowledge. And the FMCSA has unveiled an hours of service resource as revised rules take effect. Did I say that right? I probably didn't. Don't care. I'm sick. Anyway, this new tool is they're calling it Ethos, ETHOS. It stands for Educational Tool for Hours of Service. And this looks like it would come in really handy if you want to know a scenario like, will a brake count or something like that. Basically, it's a logbook type of a situation where you can go in and you can put in a scenario, and say, hey, I'm going to be in the bunk for, 2.5 hours, or I'm going to be off for 2.5 hours. What happens to my brake? Will it extend out the 14 or not? And this new tool is designed to let you know that in advance. Now, for instance, I know even for stuff like the split sleeper berth rule, the old one, even before we even talk about all the new, complications with the new one, but the old one, there are times when like some elogs will tell you in advance, what you're going to have if you take this break and then, a longer break afterwards or whatever. It'll kind of tell you in advance how many hours you're going to have after one of the breaks. But most of the elog systems I use never did. And this would come in really handy, that way you could just kind of look in advance. Usually you didn't know until actually the break was complete. And then it would say, oh, you got 5 hours left to drive. And you're like, oh crap, I thought I had 8. Nope, you had 5. So you figured it wrong. Well, this tool sounds like it's going to be pretty cool to check on this in advance so you can kind of plan your day better. Anyway, interested to see how this works. They have a detailed PDF on this, on how to use this tool. And I also have a link to that PDF and also to the tool itself, which is over on the FMCSA website. Check out the link in the show notes for that. And, you'll basically get to see like an old school graph log form, how these rules are going to take effect. And you can put in a scenario, or you can also just look at some of their pre-installed scenarios, kind of, just help you understand the rules a little bit better. They're not really that difficult, but hey, change is hard for some people. So anyway, these next stories aren't really stories at all, except for personal stories. I found out a couple of different things that I did not know. For instance, we all know about the new split sleeper berth rule, where if you have at least 2 hours or 3 hours in the bunk, you can extend your 14-hour day. We just talked about that, right? Well, I had a question. I drive a day cab. I don't have a sleeper berth. And actually, I've tested this in my truck. I have hit that I want to go to the sleeper berth, and my elog promptly says, you don't have a sleeper berth. You cannot do this. And I thought, well, Mr. Smart Aleck Truck. But hey, it knows. But, this specifically says that you can extend it using a split sleeper berth. And it's assuming you're going to be able to finish that last half. You're going to get your 3 hours in at the beginning, and then you're going to finish that last 7 hours in the bunk. That is the requirement by the FMCSA. So I was thinking that, if I use that 3 hours at the beginning or that 2.5 or whatever I want to use, it's not going to let me use it. Well, I just found out recently that on my elogs, it actually does do that. I had 2.5 hours down. I was all off duty. I was just sitting there waiting on a load to be prepared. It was in the middle of my shift. And I thought, oh, great. Now I'm going to really be pushing my 14 when I get out there. Got back in my truck, took off and thought, where'd I get all that time? Sure enough, I did the math and it added 2.5 hours onto my day. So it was a 16.5 hour day. Now, another thing to note is that it didn't really give me a choice. It just did it. So that could be good. That could be bad, depending on your viewpoint. For instance, my friend driver Chris Mack, he often does not want to use that for a break because he does not want to extend out, past his 14. He just feels safer doing that. That's his prerogative. Well, his elogs actually give him a little checkbox, and he can say, it's basically saying, hey, we saw you took a 3-hour break. Do you want to use this as part of a split sleeper berth so you can extend your day? And he can either check that yes or check that no. So that is the way it should be done, honestly. But apparently not everybody's doing it the same. For instance, he is on Omnitrax and I am on Omnitrax. But apparently our companies are setting it up differently. That's interesting. So just so you know, just because one, company has whatever elog system they have doesn't mean it's going to be the same as yours. Say carriers apparently can set them up separately however they want to. Another thing I learned recently about the new rules is I was talking about the 30-minute break. And I've talked about this rule for months before this happened. And I don't think I've ever said this. If I did, I don't remember saying it. But anyway, I was talking on the phone to the aforementioned driver Chris Mack one day, and he was a little tight on his 8-hour that day. And, he hit a traffic jam and he was sitting there and I said, man, that really sucks. You're not going to be able to make your 8. And he said, no, I'm logging it off duty. And I said, well, that don't matter. Your 8's still counting. And he said, no, it doesn't. And I was like, yeah, it does. And he said, no, it doesn't. And I said, yeah, it does. And we went back and forth a little bit on that. And then he said, I'm looking right at it on my log. It's not counting down. Well, you know me. I don't take the word of anybody like that, even though Chris clearly knew what he was talking about, because I checked that later on. And sure enough, I've been running these elogs the whole time, and that 8-hour clock stops when you're not driving. Now, I knew this for the break, but I thought that was only if, you completed a 30-minute break. But it's like that, if you pause and go in and take a leak and it takes you 8 minutes, well, you still have that 8 minutes on your 8-hour clock. And man, that's coming really handy, even though I didn't know I had that option before. But hey, just can't believe I've been reporting on this longer than pretty much anybody else. I've heard talking about this and I never once mentioned that. How cool is that? So anyway, driver Chris Mack, thanks for straightening me out on that. I do appreciate it. Just goes to show you learn something new every day. Hey, continuing on the line of hours of service, let's head over to thetruckersreport.com and check out this article called FMCSA says hours of service rules still apply to self-driving truck drivers, at least for now. I didn't even know this was an issue. I didn't know, but apparently a company called Pronto.ai, they are an autonomous tech company. It was founded by the former Google engineer who stole secrets. He's actually in prison right now. He started a company called Auto, which was later purchased by Uber. Anyway, he's in prison for what is considered the biggest trade secret crime I've ever seen, according to the judge. Oh, well, at least he got busted and he's serving time for it. So anyway, apparently Pronto had asked the FMCSA for an exemption to the 11-hour driving limit in the 14-hour day because they said that their drivers of these autonomous vehicles, basically the ones who were, driving them and testing them, were less fatigued. They said they wanted to go up to 13 hours and 15 hours respectively. Well, the FMCSA rejected their application, basically saying there isn't enough evidence, although they say it does make sense on the surface that somebody who is not, having to do all of the pedal pushing and the steering wheel turning and all that stuff that, you would be less fatigued and could drive longer. On the surface, they say that sounds feasible, but they don't have enough evidence to suggest it. But they do say that could happen in the future. So just be prepared that, hey, maybe one day that guy that's sitting on his phone while he's going down the road and not looking at it while the truck is driving itself, may get to drive more hours than you. Interesting. Going to have to keep an eye on that one. But for now, at least the FMCSA has dropped it. And knowing them, they're going to need a lot of evidence on this before they change that rule, because they typically like to go for a lot of data before they make decisions like this, which is typically why, it takes so long to get the hours of service rules kicked in when we have new ones. So there will be a link in the show notes to that article, obviously, as there will be to this next one, which is on transport topics at ttnews.com. This one has nothing to do with trucks whatsoever, but it just interested me. There's a company called Waymo, and they are beginning fully driverless rides for all Arizona customers. So these are the kind of self-driving cars where they seriously have no driver whatsoever. You're going to be able to flag them down with an app, hop in, they're going to take you where they're going. And I am really interested to see how this all plays out. For one, I'm interested to see, if we have accidents and things like that, if it's reported, that the trip was really, really slow because the cars were being super cautious, or, whether or not even the public is just going to trust them enough to bother hailing them in the first place instead of getting a cab with a real driver. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think I want to be the guinea pig on one of these things, but they're doing it in Phoenix. Mainly, the way I understand it, it's largely because Phoenix is really easy to get around to. If you've ever been down there, it's basically laid out in a grid situation. Everything runs north, south, east, and west in a block type formation, and it makes it easier to navigate the area. So anyway, they started this on October 8th, and I haven't heard any more news about it. Maybe they don't have any information on it yet, but it's going to be very, very interesting. So we'll keep an eye on this one too. All right, let's move over to some awesome news at Transport Topics. That's ttnews.com, link in the show notes. This one is called Trucking Approaches Holiday Shipping Season Unlike Any Seen Before. Well, that's good news, right? Yeah, apparently the industry does expect this season to be even busier than normal, which is good for LTL, I know, because, it typically slows down a little bit in the winter. Hopefully that will stay up. According to FedEx and UPS, they have indicated their expectations are for a record-setting busy holiday season. That's consistent with other metrics they've been looking at and stuff like that. And DHL, they expect to see 30 to 50% more volume on this holiday season compared to last year. So that's good. We have to assume that if companies like that are going to, pick up, that probably everybody else is going to pick up too. The idea being here that, people are staying at home more. They're going to be doing more online shopping. Of course, stuff has to be shipped, whether it's, whether you buy it online or buy it in a store. But either way, trucking hopefully will keep going hardcore on this and we'll all stay busy. I'm really looking forward to this because as an LTL driver, typically we start slowing down around October or November. And they are saying in this article that they expect it to remain strong through January. And we're just going to have to see how that goes. Either way, it kind of explains this next story on Transport Topics. This one is called Trucker Pay Increasing as Driver Shortage Grows. Industry Capacity Tightens. Okay. Again, we're not going to get into the whole driver shortage and why that is or if it even exists. Arguments on both sides. Not going to get into it again today. But what this tells you is that with all of this freight out here and they're raising pay to try to get drivers, they need drivers to drive these trucks, if they're expecting more capacity. Now, what that means for you is, quite honestly, the main topic of today's show was going to be about whether you should switch jobs. We just talked about job hopping in the last episode, and I was going to cover, whether you actually should job hop and when you should, how kind of when when the time is right. Of course, I didn't get to that because, like I said, I was sick. I'm way behind, and all this news piled up on me too. But anyway, they're talking about, there was a pay hike back in 2018, and now they're going to be raising Some companies are going to actually be raising the pay even more, and they're all still competing, which means you as a driver are in high demand. So I'm just going to preemptively strike a little bit on the podcast that I'll probably do next month. And that is to say that keep your eyes open right now. Just keep your eyes open. Don't get fixated on your company. You know, yes, we were all happy where we were for, maybe you've been there for years, but just keep your options open. Keep your eyes peeled. See what's out there. Maybe you're missing a golden opportunity. And we'll get into that again in the next episode, hopefully. And if you got a story about this, maybe you stuck at a job too long and you left and you found out that you had it much better off somewhere else, write in and tell me about that. Likewise, maybe you left a job that you loved and you absolutely hated it because you went for, the greener grass on the other side and you really screwed up and you went right back to your old company or something like that. Whatever your story is, let me know. Just email me at truckerdump@gmail.com. And of course, I love getting audio comments. You can do that just by, opening your cool smartphone, and most of them have some kind of a voice memo app in there, and you can just record what you want to say, keep it short, about 3 minutes or less. And, just tell me what you got to say. Send it off to truckerdump@gmail.com. And remember, turn your truck off before you do that. Please. We all thank you. So anyway, there's a lot more financial stuff about this and, why the industry is paying truckers more, stuff like that. If you're interested in it, head over to Transport Topics and or just check the link in the show notes. That's much, much easier to tap there. Hey, this next one, I don't know if you remember or not. I honestly don't remember what episode it was, but we had talked about training standards for truck drivers, in the training program for new truck drivers coming into the industry. And I don't even remember the context of what we were talking about, but Maverick, in the Trucker Dump Slack group, pointed out to me this article, which is over on landline.media. That's the Landline magazine from OIDA. And this article is written by Jamie Jones. It's called FMCSA Delays Driver Training Implementation Until 2022. Huh. Well, apparently all of this talk started back in 2015. Looks like they finally started working on it around 2016. And within a few years, I think they had a 3-year limit. They were supposed to have some guidelines set in effect where, there were minimum standards for truck driver training. For instance, like airline pilots have to have at least 250 hours of actual flight time before they can get licensed. But there is no standard among trucking companies. That's how you get these situations with, like C. Lopez, who we talked about just a few episodes, and his horrible, truck driving school story. Some of these are as fast as they can turn you. Some of these schools are, take 8 weeks. It's all over the map, and it's insane. And OIDA is pointing out that it contradicts safety by bumping this out another 2 years. But apparently they just weren't prepared for it. They don't have enough good rules in place, and they can't settle on any rules in the first place. So this is just interesting to know that, we're bumped this sucker out till 2022, that we're not going to see any training standards. And that just sucks, It's typical government fashion. You give them a job to do and say, let's make up some rules for this stuff, and they drag their feet, or they just lollygag and don't do it at all. And this is what you get when you count on government to do everything for you. That's not good. But hey, we're at the mercy of their lawmaking and rule-making abilities, and well, they suck at it. So it is what it is. We're stuck. Anyway, if you're more interested in all the details on this, just head over to Landline Magazine online, or just, what's that link? Landline.media is what the link is. Click the link in the show notes. Make it easy on yourself. Next up, let's head on back to overdriveonline.com. This is a very good article about dash cams. It's really long. We're going to cover just a little bit of it. You should really go over and check this one out. It talks everything about how these devices work, who's responsible for what. For instance, it talks about how largely this is up to the carrier. These devices can do lots of things. Of course, they always have a forward-facing camera to catch the road out in front of you, but some of them actually have a rear-facing camera to, point at the driver too. Some fleets have that disabled, some don't. Some record that stuff, some say they won't. It's really, it is a wild, wild west out there when it comes to these things. These new devices can do all sorts of things. It's not just looking for, like the old point of view is that if you had a hard braking situation or a hard swerve or something like that, that would record that incident. And that does happen. And typically that kind of information would go to a third party. Maybe it goes to the maker of the dash cam and they would evaluate it, set on standards by the company, usually the carrier. And they would say, hey, if you have a braking incident over this much force or whatever, then report it to us. That way, the company's not getting all the information. But apparently the company can get all that information and sift through it themselves. I doubt most of them are doing it, but don't take my word on that. Why monitor that stuff all the time when you can, put that off on a third party? But anyway, these systems can do so much more than just hard event-based situations. Now they can check for rolling stops. They can check for if it has access to the driver-facing camera. It can check for things like whether you have a seatbelt on, if you're smoking in the vehicle, if you're on your handheld device, all kinds of stuff. Now, again, they can be recording that or they cannot record that. So it's completely up to the company. So I'm not going to get into any more detail than that other than to just say that in the book, How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job, it's basically a list of questions you need to ask about your company. And one of the questions I say you should always ask is whether a company has dash cams and if that dash cam is forward facing or driver facing or both. And I think, and this article agrees, that is going to be an ever more important question as you're trying to find jobs in the future. So you know what you're getting into. Maybe you don't care. They point out that these systems, of course, can be used to exonerate you in the case of an accident or something like that. But the opposing lawyers also can get this information. And if they have it, they might be able to point out, if you're driving and, the camera's pointing at you, they could look at that and say, well, look how often he looks at his phone, or look how often he's smoking and not pay attention to that. Or look, he's not even wearing a seatbelt all the time, which means he's not a safe driver. And they could be able to form an opinion that you are an unsafe driver, present that to a jury. A jury doesn't know trucking at all. They believe it, this guy's just a bad apple. And so the verdict goes against you. Again, you don't know how much of that exactly is happening, but it could happen. I'm sure it has happened and will happen in the future, especially the more and more these companies are going with driver-facing cameras. So again, just the whole point of this article is just be aware that it's going on. Also be aware that each company does it differently and each dash cam has different capabilities. For instance, my company, they do have that driver-facing camera, but it has tape over it. So I know they are not using that against me. They can still use the forward-facing stuff for coaching and purposes like that, but at least I know that camera isn't staring at me. Now, if they implemented that, would I stay here? I'm pretty happy with the pay. I would hate that. So it would be a big decision for me to make, and that's a decision you're going to have to make in the future too. So anyway, more information on this, check out the link in the show notes. I really think this is one you ought to go read, whether you're looking to switch jobs or not, because they can apparently turn this stuff on if they want to immediately. I would want to know if that's happening, if you've already got a dash cam in your truck. Again, this is all up to your carrier and how they want to implement this stuff. So anyway, check out the link in the show notes and stay on top of this for future jobs, please. Hey, next up, we got another excellent trucking law article from overdriveonline.com. This one's called No False Positives, No Room for Excuses in Today's Drug Tests. Yeah, more about drug tests. This one is written by Dr. Alexander E. Underwood. He works at the KT Health Clinic, which is close to Springfield, Missouri. I'll have all his details in the link in the show notes, and I'll repeat them at the end of this story here. Basically, this is just saying with drug tests today that they are so accurate that you do not want to mess around. If you are on medication, you always need to report this ahead of time, because not only are they testing for drugs and alcohol, they're also testing for opiates and other medications. So, if a certain medication shows up, you could fail that drug test, and then the medical review officer is going to have to get involved. They're going to have to call your doctor, find out what your prescription is, find out if you should be driving with it. You could get your license suspended, all that kind of stuff. You don't want to mess with that. And they also talk a lot about CBD oils, of course, because that is a huge topic right now. All CBD products, well, not all of them, but often they will contain THC, which is the drug, the active ingredient in marijuana. And the problem is there's a lot of misinformation about CBD. Again, we've spoken about this before, but the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, does not currently check these levels in here. And that's presenting a problem, because there's a lot of these, all these CBD products out there, and they want to claim they're the best ones. So naturally, they might want to push the envelope a little bit. And, they're only supposed to have 0.3% THC in these CBD oils and products, but some of them are actually going above the limit. And so basically, everybody who knows anything about this is advising that you stay away from CBD oils, because you never quite know what you're going to get. Even if it's put right there on the label, you don't know. It's not being checked by the FDA. Don't take a risk. Got a personal example of this. Well, not personal, but somebody at my company, older guy, he has real bad arthritis, huge knuckles and everything. He's in bad shape. He is in a lot of pain, and he was taking CBD oil, and it was working well for him, but he got the random drug screen that always happens, and they fired him. No questions asked, just fired him. And that's really sad, because it was working for him. So I hope they can work this stuff out. I hope maybe the FDA will start regulating this stuff eventually. And, we can actually start using some of these CBD products. There's not a lot of evidence that they work, but there's a lot of anecdotal evidence from people who use it that say it works, and honestly, what do they have to gain if they're not getting high? I mean, why would they say it works if it doesn't work? Because they're not actually getting high. It just works. So hopefully they'll be able to get all this sorted out. But in the meantime, just advising you, stay away from that CBD of any kind. Unless you don't value your job. Because we've got this clearinghouse out here now, right? I mean, you know what I'm talking about. The big drug clearinghouse that's going on that everybody's supposed to register for if you want to get a job in the future. Every company will be checking this clearinghouse to see if you're on there, to see if you have failed tests in the past. All of that is going to be on record, and you don't want a failed thing on your record. I'd also like to point out that I got an email, and because I have already signed up for the clearinghouse, the drug clearinghouse, and it basically says there is a new way for you to get notifications from them. So I would advise going to the clearinghouse website if you aren't already registered in that, and think you might be wanting to get a job sometime soon, or maybe not. If not, you might want to go ahead and you could wait until you're ready to find a new job, but I don't see what the point is. I'd just go ahead and get it over with, sign up for it. But anyway, once you're signed up or once you're on that website, you'll be able to get notifications, and that will tell you if anybody is checking your record. It's just, kind of like a credit report kind of, you can check and see if anybody's, running your credit for any reason. Well, you don't even have to do that with this. It's just, if you set up the notifications right, it will just notify you, hey, somebody's hitting your information and wanting to find out about you. And, hey, if you're not in the middle of a job search, that might concern you as to who's looking at that and why. So it's good to know. It's good to stay on top of that stuff. Again, that was an email that I got directly from them because I was already a member of that group. I will put a link in the show notes to the Clearinghouse website in case you are not part of that already. Hey, you want to hear an insane story? Follow me over to thetruckersreport.com or click a link in the show notes. This one's called Owner-Operator Ordered to Pay $411 Million, the largest verdict ever. I'm assuming they meaning in the trucking world. Apparently what has happened was a motorcyclist was injured in a multi-vehicle accident. Now, this accident was caused by weather conditions and speeding vehicles, and one of those speeding vehicles was a trucker. And like I said, he just owned one truck. That's all he had. And in the accident, the motorcyclist veered off the road onto the emergency lane and he impacted a stopped truck. Now, this does not say whether this trucker was the stopped truck, but I'm assuming it was since that's the one he hit. But anyway, it did say this was not the truck that caused the accident. Again, it doesn't say whether this was the truckers, that got sued here. I'm assuming it was. But anyway, the biker, he flew off the bike and he landed on the road. He broke both sides of his pelvis away from his spine and suffered severe internal damage. He was in the hospital for 6 months with those injuries, and he now suffers from severe pain, can only walk with the aid of specialized crutches. Well, that's really sad. But again, if this trucker was the one that was parked on the side of the road, first, he should have had his lights on, but this one's sketchy. I don't know. I mean, if you're in a big backup like that, what can you do? Again, should have had your lights on. So I don't know if that's how they're getting him on this, but that is a big number, 411 million. The article says it's not clear how they expect a one-man trucking company to be able to pay that bill. Well, obviously he's never going to be able to. But anyway, the important lesson to learn from this article is that this trucker defended himself in the trial. No lawyer. Don't do that. I mean, he probably thought he was going to get away scot-free, because he's just sitting on the side of the road. He thought it was a no-brainer. Do not ever take something like this for granted and think you're just going to walk away from it, because lawyers. That's all I'm going to say. Oh, boy. What a mess. I feel sorry for all parties involved in that. Oh, what a bad situation. Hey, speaking of lawsuits, do you remember the truck driver? He was a Keenan Advantage truck driver, tanker driver. He got in an incident up there in Minnesota where right after the the death of George Floyd and all the police brutality and all the protesting that was going on and everything, this is where he was on a section of road. I think it was Interstate 35. He rounded the corner and saw that 3,000 protesters had moved from the stadium over onto the highway. And the DOT admits that they didn't get to the road in time. They didn't act quick enough, and he got through the barricades before they put the barricades up. So he didn't know he was heading into anything like that. Eventually he was, stopped in that traffic, and he got pulled out of there. He got beaten severely. He is still injured from that. He's still on limited duty and recovering from his injuries, and he still hasn't driven a truck since that day. Well, initially they had let him off, said he did nothing wrong, but now they're going back and looking at the footage. They say they've got video from several sources, including traffic cameras and cell phone video, and they also recreated his drive from the entrance ramp onto the Mississippi River Bridge where the incident took place. And now they're saying he had sufficient time to see the crowd and stop. Now, I had heard this before, that he actually did almost come to a stop, and then he decided to go ahead forward, and then he kind of slowed down again before he hit the crowds and tried to creep his way through. But apparently he did have plenty of time to stop. Again, I don't know what they expected him to do, just sit there on the highway. Like I said before, if it had been me and there was nobody coming down that road, I would have just turned around, gone back the other direction. I'd rather get a ticket for doing that than drive into a crowd like that. But regardless, they are trying to get him for this now, and they're going to, come against him on this. The funny thing is, it turns out this truck driver was doing someone a favor. This was all about the death of a black man, George Floyd, right? And now everybody's racist and all white people hate all black people, right? Well, according to this gas station owner was a black man, and he has said that this Keenan Advantage driver was the only driver willing to make deliveries down to his station because everybody was nervous about going into that neighborhood. Rightly so, apparently. So right after this incident took place, when everybody was tweeting and, Facebooking about this driver who drove into the crowd and everything, this black business owner, he tweeted, "These people suck. The driver just left my store doing me, a black business owner, a favor." So how do you like that? A guy who's down there doing a black business owner a favor gets hauled out of his truck and beaten to a pulp. And thankfully there were some good Samaritans who jumped in to that in the middle of the crowd and stopped that beating. Otherwise, God knows what would have happened. But anyway, he's scheduled to be in court on November 10th. And of course, he plans to plead not guilty to the charges. It's going to be interesting to see how this one goes. Man, I really thought he was scot-free on this one once they announced it. But, well, trucker, it always comes down to the trucker, doesn't it? People see a big paycheck, they can get one. Of course, I don't know if they're going for criminal charges here or what. It doesn't really say. Anyway, sad. I hope the guy gets away with it. Sorry, that came out really bad. Not get away with it. I don't think he did much wrong, especially since he did slow down when he was entering that crowd. If he was really intent on doing harm, he'd have just kept the hammer down, blown the horn, and gone through there at 60 miles an hour and watched people dodge out of the way, like an action movie or something. But he didn't do that. So hopefully he will walk away from this. What a mess. So, hey, you want to hear another story that sucks? No? Well, that's the nature of what's going on here. This one's on thetruckersreport.com. Oh, boy. This one is called Judge Overturns 12-Year Sentence for Pilot Flying J Executive. Says jury shouldn't have been allowed to hear deeply offensive recording. All right. You remember this. This is back when Pilot Flying J went through their hubbub. There was a few individuals, again, not the entire company, just a few individuals on there that were defrauding trucking companies by not giving them back their full rebates. So anyway, this big-time executive was sentenced to 12 years in jail, along with two others that had lesser sentences. Anyway, this one in particular, his name is Mark Hazelwood. He was found guilty of wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and witness tampering. Ooh, that doesn't sound good. So anyway, let me just read a little bit of this here. It says, during this trial, the prosecution played a recording for the jury where Hazelwood and others can be heard discussing the scam. During that discussion, Hazelwood and others can be heard using offensive language. This was an 8-minute recording, and apparently Hazelwood and all the people he was talking to were making really offensive remarks about African Americans and women, and laughing along to racist and some kind of, says, a misogynistic tune they called the Greasy N-word song. I don't know what that is. Says he used the N-word no less than 7 times and 12 variations on expletives 14 different times and other expletives 3 times. I mean, foul mouth, foul language, foul subjects, racist remarks, prejudice remarks, just horrible things that were said. But apparently what they're saying is that this might have led to the jury just not liking him because he was a racist. Because he was a misogynist, all this stuff. So that could have skewed the sentencing. and, whether he was found guilty or not. Sadly, this kind of makes sense. I don't like it because I think this guy ought to still be in prison. But I don't know. It's just an interesting case where, he's going to get off because the jury could be skewed by this language. So it's like he's a real bad guy because he said bad things and they heard it. He might get off, which, great. Bad guy gets off. I told you it was a crappy story. Anyway. All right. These last two stories require your input. And, that's why I put them at the end. So you will actually remember this, hopefully. All right. This first one is overdriveonline.com. Driver feedback wanted on I-10 truck parking issues. Basically, the I-10 Corridor Coalition wants feedback if you ever park or travel along I-10 in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. Now, this is a survey to, just examine the truck parking access. It's a 27-question survey. Shouldn't take you long. I've got a link in the show notes to the survey. And, you can go check out more about this link here. Basically, I think these kind of surveys are very important because we're the drivers out here dealing with the parking issues. We're the ones out here every night doing this, and they don't know how to fix the problem unless we tell them, right? So make sure you run on over here. Take this 27-question survey. Again, shouldn't take long. Link in the show notes to the survey and this little article. Article's pretty short. I basically said everything in it. So just go to this survey. Do your duty as a truck driver. If you want to make things better, take part in it. Now, I said these last two stories involved your input, but maybe they don't. It depends. This last one is found on Transport Topics. That's ttnews.com. FMCSA seeks nominations for Motor Carrier Safety Advisory Committee. Remember in the last episode, maybe it was the one before, we talked about how the FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, was adding some truckers to this committee. And I was saying about time. Well, apparently they're doing this and you can nominate someone or yourself. It's kind of vague on here, but it looks like they're going to be accepting applications by maybe November 29th. Not really sure about that. You'd think it'd just give a flat out, date, but it doesn't. It says 30 days from the document's publication date, and up here it implies that the publication is going to be registered on October 29th. So I'm guessing that means November 29th. Anyway, what they are looking for here is, now this whole panel is made up of 25 people, but it's from all sorts of sources, law enforcement and, carriers and all kinds of stuff. So just so you know, there's not going to be 25 truckers sitting on this panel. But a couple of things of note is that you must be able to attend 2 or 3 meetings each year through video conference or in person, and you do serve without pay. There, you have to have some sort of special knowledge about the trucking industry, have experience on panels that deal with transportation safety. And it says you need to have like a record of collaboration and professional experience on motor carrier safety issues, things like that. So if you're just a regular old Joe Schmo, don't bother. They're looking for experts in this field. But say a particular, maybe as a safety director that you really like or something. Is that even something that exists? A safety director that you like? Anyway, say somebody in your company who used to be a driver, and he or she, I should say, is a really smart whippersnapper, and you think they'd be good for this position. Well, you can nominate them. And I'm not going to go into all the details here, but if you're interested in that, or if you are that person who, thinks would be good for this job, this unpaid job, I might add, check out the link in the show notes here and submit yourself for somebody else. For the record, don't try to be nice and submit me. Not that you're going to, but don't. I do not consider myself an expert. I don't want to attend these things. I want them to listen to me when they have commenting periods, and that's how I will continue to participate. I don't want to be a part of this. So don't try to be nice, please. Not that you were going to. Well, that about does it for the news. I don't know if you can hear it, but my voice is getting a little hoarse, but in good news, I did not hack a loogie all over the microphone. So there's that. All right, let's move on.
Hey, it's time to hear from our sponsor, Pilot Flying J, and their awesome app. Hey, Pilot Flying J still wants to show you how much they appreciate everything you do as a trucker. And they're going to prove that by keeping up this awesome Push for Points program. You can still earn up to 4 points per gallon, and you can get there quicker than ever. Listen, all you got to do is fill up with 75 gallons of fuel. By the time you hit your 6th fuel for the month, you're at 4 points per gallon. Now you got a hole burned in your pocket. So what are you going to do with it? Well, your rig's not the only thing that needs a fill up, right? You get hungry too. And of course you get thirsty, need some coffee, need to stay awake. You can use your points for all of this stuff, as well as merchandise and stuff for your rig. You can even redeem these points for reserved parking spots and Wi-Fi credits at participating Pilot and Flying J locations. And of course, there's always good deals in the Pilot Flying J app. But you can't do Push for Points, and you can't get these deals without downloading the app. It's free, so you got nothing to lose. Just search for Pilot Flying J in your app store in your phone. Or go to pilotflyingj.com/app. Download it, open the app, activate Push for Points, get that money rolling. So again, from Pilot Flying J, thanks for all you do, drivers, and stay safe out on the road. Terms and conditions do apply for Push for Points. See pilotflyingj.com/app for details. And thanks to Pilot Flying J for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump.
Give us a bottle of your finest champagne, 5 shrimp cocktails, and some bread for my brother.
What's that?
Sushi.
Sushi?
Boy, some chicken wings have really hit the spot.
This is a tasty burger.
Don't play with your food, eat it.
All right, today's trucker grub is, well, a bit different. It's real short, to the point, and it comes from Scott Gunter, who goes by the name of Killjoy in the Trucker Dump Slack group. Take it away, Scott.
Hey Todd, it's Scott Gunter, also known as Killjoy in the Slack group. I thought I would do a trucker grub segment. If you've ever been in the Northeast, like Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Maryland, there's these little truck stops called rudders. Not all of them have overnight parking. I know the one that I stayed at, and I cannot remember for the life of me what town it was outside of, but it was where I was picking up at a Dr. Pepper. They all have these little restaurants inside of them that you basically go up and you order what you want off of a kiosk, and they have like this burger. You can put whatever you want onto the burger. And I had my wife with me on the road when I went there, and her and I both got like 2 burgers, a couple sides, and I think we walked out of there spending less than $15 for both of us. There's like 78 locations altogether. I'm sure you've driven by them, seen signs for them. They're really, really good. So they all have truck parking. At least as far as I know, they all have truck parking. And yeah, that's my trucker grub segment. Thank you.
No, Scott, thank you. You know, I know the place you're talking about. I have never eaten there before, but I do recognize the name of it. And what he is referring to here, just to clarify, is Rudders, Rutters. And I'm looking at their website here. It said they got 78 locations in central Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Maryland. Like I said, I've never eaten here before, but I know the type of place you're talking about. Quick Trip has some of these out in the Midwest here. Like you say, a kiosk, you walk up to it. Same with Wawa has some locations out. That's WAWA, kind of a weird name. They have locations in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, DC, and Florida, of all places, kind of out of the beaten path. But anyway, all these kind of they're basically little delis in the back of the store. And Scott's right. A lot of times that food is really good and it's really inexpensive. Now, I've not had a lot of luck with the hot dogs and stuff, but hamburgers, yes. Often they're burritos. They'll have burritos, or breakfast burritos are really good. Breakfast sandwiches, pretty darn good. Like I said, really cheap. So this was a little unconventional, not a restaurant, so to speak, but it's a great idea because these things are so readily available to us as truckers, and just don't overlook them. Just because there's a McDonald's next door, don't just go to the McDonald's. Walk into that little truck stop or that little convenience store across the street and see if they've got something like this. It's real handy, quick and easy, and like I say, pretty cheap most of the time, pretty decent. So again, Scott, thank you for that Trucker Grub segment. Short, sweet, and to the point. And the audio sounded really good. Thanks for turning your truck off. All right, this is the part where I would normally have the main topic of the episode, but like I said, I have not felt well for the past couple of weeks. I'm still under the spell a little bit of whatever I've got. Anyway, not going to go into all the gory details of it, but just didn't really feel up to doing much of anything. As a matter of fact, the evil overlord did not even let me play Destiny last weekend, and that really hurt me almost as much as this cold did. But anyway, I had to podcast this week, so man, the end of the season on Destiny's coming up, and I'm not getting to do it. It ends next week. What am I going to do? Oh well. Anyway, I apologize. We'll get back to normal schedule, hopefully, if I'm better by the next podcast. That's a whole month from now. If I'm not better by then, well, let's hope I'm not dead. So anyway, we still got to hear from you, right?
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
All right, this first bit of feedback is actually not really feedback at all, but it's just something that I was informed about, a service that was available, and it's not probably relevant to everybody. As a matter of fact, I know it's not. This is a service called TrueCon, and it is a TRUCON, and that can be found at truecon.app. That's TRUCON.app. And what this is, well, it's basically only for people in Southwest Ontario. Oh yeah. First, I'd like to say, well, first, how about second or third or fourth? I'm not getting a commission on this. I'm not getting anything for this. It's just a service to those of you who live in Southern Ontario. Basically, what this app does is it connects drivers with work. Yes, we've seen a million of these apps, right? Well, this focuses more on dump truck drivers and construction jobs. So basically the way it's designed is, you as a driver can go in and, make a profile, talk about the equipment you have available, and then you can go in there and search for jobs. And also people who need to hire somebody also have access to the job, and they can, search for people who have the right kind of equipment that they need. The idea is to keep your equipment always moving. Certain times of the year it gets slow and your equipment's just sitting around and not being utilized. So this is what this is designed to do. It's called TrueCon, and it's only available in Southwest Ontario. They claim that this is the only thing like that up there. I don't know. That's what this press release here said. But anyway, if you want to check that out, that is truecon.app. Like I said, this is going to be a subscription-based platform, but right now it is free to use for all users. So if you're up there in that area, you got that kind of equipment, or you need that kind of a job done, go and check out truecon.app. And like I said, I want to talk about another product. Again, I'm not getting a commission or anything on this, just something, quite honestly, I was informed about, and I was just like, what the heck? Didn't know such thing even existed. So anyway, this one is from a company called Brooklyn Bedding. Yes, Brooklyn, I assume it's Brooklyn like New York, but I'm not sure about that. Anyway, it is truckingmattress.com. Now you might think, okay, trucking mattress, what's so unique about this one? Well, it's called the Brooklyn Fuel Bucket Bed. And I thought, what? Fuel bucket? Well, this thing is made of convoluted foam. And here's the unique thing about it. It is 5.75 inches thick, And the crazy thing, it's designed to soak up 60 gallons of diesel fuel in the event of an emergency. Well, what the heck, apparently this has been a thing, for years when, drivers, have a spill or whatever, and they're looking for any way to, sop up that diesel that's spilling. Well, traditional mattress can only do so much because it's got, whatever it's got in it. But this one is made of foam and it's specifically designed to soak up liquid like this, and specifically diesel fuel. So how cool is that? 60 gallons is a lot of diesel fuel you could, soak up with this thing. Save yourself a big hazmat bill, or save your company a big hazmat bill. Anyway, I just thought this was very interesting. And when I saw this, I thought, man, this thing's going to be expensive. Well, I was wrong about that too. This thing retails for only $163.75. And right now they're actually got a 20% off deal. So it's $130. There's a 120-night trial on it too. So that's pretty cool. Free shipping and returns. And it's made in America. What do you know? So anyway, like I said, I'm not getting a commission on that. I just never heard of a product like this, and it fascinated me. So there you have it. The Brooklyn Fuel Bucket Bed. You can find that at truckingmattress.com. All right, now let's get on to the real listener feedback, where actually you write in and we talk. First, we're going to hear from Kool-Aid, who is Trevor Dunkel, but he's Kool-Aid to me in the Trucker Dump Slack group. Actually, when we talk on the phone, I call him Trevor. So anyway, couple of episodes ago, we were talking about a new technology where you could, track a trailer. And the idea was that, you could pull into a terminal or whatever, or a customer, and you would be able to, a GPS would come up and you would be able to pinpoint exactly where that empty trailer was and whether that trailer was empty and all of that good stuff. And, the company we mentioned doing this was Schneider. Well, Kool-Aid used to work for Schneider, and he wanted to write in and share a little bit about this. And he did give me permission to use his name, obviously, since, well, you're going to hear what he has to say about it. Anyway, he says, okay, so Schneider unveiled the Find My Trailer app that I was describing on the podcast. The app rolled out in early 2008.
Strike that, make that 2018. He goes on.
In theory, it's a great idea, but in practice, it was only accurate about 30 or 40% of the time. The app itself, even though it was brand new, felt like it was made in the 1990s. It also had several bugs and glitches that I mentioned several times to the tech department, and not a single one of those bugs had been patched by the time I left the company. And that was about a year and a half ago, probably, maybe a bit longer. Their older trailers didn't have any sensors at all, so you couldn't find those. And the majority of the time, the actual location on the map was only accurate within a mile radius, so it wasn't precise enough to bother looking, especially when you're looking for it in a sea of other trailers. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, the whole point of it is to find the individual trailer in a mess of trailers. It's not very accurate. Anyway, he goes on and says, the navigation hardly ever worked, probably because the accuracy mentioned above wasn't very good. Probably the only nice thing about it was it would inform you if the trailer had been written up for an out of service defect, so you could immediately check to see if the defect had been repaired or not. The problem with that was that obviously you wouldn't know if it had been fixed until you actually get to the trailer. The defect repairs were hardly ever updated after the repair was made. Yeah, that sounds about right. Good idea in theory, but in practice, it doesn't work. Anyway, he says, I understand it takes time to refine an app like that, but I eventually got to the point where I quit trying to use it except to check for out-of-service defects because, well, it was more of a hassle to use it than it was to not use it. Well, that makes sense. So many of this technology is well-meaning, but, it just doesn't work worth a crap. And I'd like to see this. I would really like to see this work. And quite honestly, I don't know why it wouldn't work better than that. Because we all know with our GPS units nowadays and stuff, it gets pretty darn accurate. It can pinpoint us usually down to within 10 feet or so. And that is good enough to find any trailer in a parking lot somewhere, Anyway, I I hope they get this implemented eventually. Thank God I'm not working for a company that I got to drive around looking for empties anymore. But for all of your sake, I hope we get there soon. Hey, next up, we're going to hear from Todd R., who goes by Road Toad in the Trucker Dump Slack group. Hey, if you remember this, we were talking about Todd's experience at his driving school. I believe it was in Canada, if memory serves. Yeah, in Ontario. And he said there was a lot of racism and prejudice within his school. And I was like, what is going on with that? And I was wondering if it was the students who were saying this kind of stuff, or if it was the teachers, or if both, or what the situation was. Well, he's got a follow-up here. He says, hey, Todd, following up on the racism and prejudice in truck driving school. Mostly the comments were from students, but they weren't corrected by teachers, with some staff laughing along. What made it worse was that some of the students were from the particular races being targeted. Ooh. He says, when I finished the course, I had the chance to sit down with the school administration to talk through my experiences as a result of writing a formal complaint. I'm not one to complain, but this was just terrible and crossed so many times. I know there is plenty of racism and prejudice in truck driving, but the schools should be the first one to put a stop to it all. We're all in this together. You know, Todd, I couldn't agree with you more. That is insane. I mean, I can see other students making those kind of remarks, but those teachers should have cracked down on that crap really fast. I don't know how they haven't gotten in trouble for this in the past, but good for you for turning them in. I would have done the same thing. I would have filed for a formal complaint. Good for you. And if you're new and going to truck driving school and you hear this kind of thing going on, talk to somebody about it. Same with your current company. If you've got drivers who are talking like this, put a stop to it. Don't take matters into your own hands, though. Don't go pounding on some guy. That'll just get you fired. Go through the proper channels. Talk to HR. That's human resources. I assume you knew that, but you never know. So Todd, thanks for the follow-up, and thanks for doing the right thing. Hey, next up, let's check in with our episodal. I don't know what the word is. It's not daily. It's not weekly, but our contributor named Stevie. She is a new listener, and she's being very zealous about writing comments. And I'm loving it. They actually have slowed down a bit, but let's cover a couple more of them today. First, she listened to Trucker Dump 49, which was called Fear and Loathing of Electronic Logs, back when I was really fearing and loathing them coming. Didn't know what to expect. She writes, hey, Todd, an informative post. I'm from the old school trucker. I know these elog things are becoming an unavoidable fact of trucking life these days, though. I have not used one of these new things, though, so I can't speak from experience on using them every day. I can, however, speak on the subject of paper logbooks, or, as we used to call them, the Great Book of Lies. She says, it seems with these new finagled e-logs things, there are no more secrets or lies. Big Brother is watching. Well, Stevie, apparently Big Brother is watching, but he's not watching you because you're still on paper logs. And we're going to figure out how that happened and what's going on there, probably in the next episode. But for now, let's hit one other email from Stevie. She comments on Trucker Dump 51, which was called Sucking It Up. She writes, hey, Todd, I think you about covered it. As far as your buddy Wilson, lucky him. This was the one about my friend Wilson, who is kind of well off, and he was going back to school, had gotten out of trucking, and I was just a little jealous about him getting to go back to school, and I was still stuck in a truck because that's what I wanted to do at the time. I've accepted my fate now. I'm a trucker, probably always will. There for a while, I wasn't even calling myself a trucker, but I kind of had to change that when I had a podcast called Trucker Dump. So anyway, this was basically about him. And she says, lucky him, spout off all he wants. He has the luxury of having a rich, well-to-do family. Sorry, I don't buy into any of the religious God stuff. Yeah, we spoke about God a little bit there because Wilson is a Christian also. And she says, but to each his own, I guess. Anyway, love the blog and the podcast. One of my new favorites to listen to. Safe travels, my friend. Well, safe travels to you, Stevie, wherever you may be. As you all know, I am a Christian. I have said it many, many times on here. I'm very proud of it, and I'm happy to be a Christian, but I try not to cram my beliefs down other people's throats because I know you're not listening to this podcast for my religious beliefs or my political beliefs as far as that goes. So I try to keep that as separated as I can from the podcast. Sometimes it does slip in a little bit, but there it is, you know. I'm just glad Stevie is still listening. And if you are not the God type of person, I'm glad you're still listening, because you would be surprised how many, people I get on Twitter or emails that, just don't agree with what I say in some little way. They find out I'm a Christian and I can't listen anymore. Well, that's sad, because I like to think I can separate the person from their ideas sometimes. I don't have to agree with everybody politically or religiously, right? As for Wilson, though, he can't help it. His family's wealthy, right? I mean, sometimes we're just stuck with the families we've got. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. And if you believe what you hear a lot about the rich family, sometimes they're much worse than those of us who didn't have a lot of money. Anyway, we can't choose our parents. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't choose them. So anyway, I was just making a comparison with this one, showing that we all start out somewhere different and we all still have to make our own choices. And that's just the way it is. So anyway, we'll check in with Stevie in the next podcast again, and many, many more to come. Keep them coming, Stevie. Thank you. Hey, next up, this one's kind of unique. Usually, when somebody is commenting about the tailgating episode, that is usually a four-wheeler who is really, really, really pissed. Well, this time we have a trucker who's not very happy either. But hey, at least it's your trucker weighing in on it, right? And, I always like to share other people's opinions on here. So this one is from Gabe. He writes, this is also Trucker Dump 95, 4 reasons that trucker might be tailgating you. For the record, there is a big disclaimer at the top saying, I'm not saying this is, something that is proved, and I recommend doing this. I'm just saying this, if you ever wonder why a trucker's tailgating you, this might be why. And I put that real big in disclaimer up here, but I'm not sure if Gabe saw that. Anyway, he writes, what's funny is that I'm a truck driver as well. I haven't been doing it 22 years like you have, but it doesn't take that long to figure out that all of these reasons to tailgate are horse pucky. What's funny is you mentioned Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory, and yet you're still so dense you can't see the irony in not being able to figure out why tailgating is not only not advised, but there's zero excuse for it. See, by tailgating, you take away your ability to safely come to a stop in the event I hit my brakes. And yes, I love brake checking other truckers just to drive that point home. Physics 101, bringing it back to Sheldon. An object in motion will stay in motion unless acted upon by an outside force. And it's also impossible to stop even an empty rig on a dime, to say nothing of a fully loaded one. If I have to come to a stop, you checking your teeth for spinach in my trailer doors will mean you're now bye-bye. Unless you could rewrite the laws of physics, you must leave distance in order to account for an emergency situation. YouTube is full of videos of wrecks caused by tailgating trucks. And you know who's at fault? Yep, the trucker. And rightly so. Now let me stop you for a second here, Gabe. Just weighing in here a little bit. You've got a lot of good points in here, but you say there's zero excuse for tailgating, right? Because it's unsafe. Well, isn't brake checking somebody unsafe too? And you said it yourself right here. You do it to other truckers just to drive the point home. So are you willing for that trucker to come plowing into your back end, and cause an accident and possibly take out other cars in the situation too, just by brake checking? Just making that point. He goes on and says, slower rigs. All I got to say to you is, man, if you see that Swifty up there, you better grab that passing lane early and ride it. And why are you planning your trips down to the gnat's ass anyway? Don't you allow for leeway in case poop happens? Okay, so you've got a 70 or 80 mile an hour rig. Don't you trip plan at 60 like a normal person? Or is your load that effing hot that it's got to be there yesterday? Well, I don't know about you, Gabe, but I drive a company truck. I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast drive company trucks, and we are a hindrance no matter what we do. If we get up behind a truck so we can get over there at the last second, and take that lane and get around them as fast as possible because we are speed limited, we're tailgating a little too close. But if we get out there in the left lane, now we have people backed up behind us, unless we wait. But like you said, just get out there and ride it. Well, that's easy to say, but if you're going, 65 and you're trying to pass somebody going 64, if they don't tap the brake and let you pass, I know what you're thinking. Just stay behind them. Well, it's a long day to be stuck behind somebody when you just keep creeping up on them. Yes, you could set the cruise, but I'm going to argue again in my Trucker Dump 66, the turtle racing, truckers go turtle racing. If somebody's a little bit faster than you, just tap the brake, let them go around. That's all I'm saying. Don't be holding somebody up just because you're a little bit slower. They're going to get them around. They're going to get around you eventually. Just let it happen. So anyway, he says, wishy-washy drivers, that's the kind who go, let off the gas, gas on it. This is truckers and cars also. Obviously, we know that. He says, please stay behind them because trust me, they aren't going as far as you. So you lose maybe 10 minutes of time waiting for them to find an exit or get tired of seeing you behind them. Which is kind of my point, Gabe. If you get behind them close enough, and again, in the disclaimer of this article, I'm not saying a tailgate is one car length away. I'm saying a tailgate is, 3 or 4 car lengths away. So you do have some breathing room there, but it's just enough to make them uncomfortable. He goes on and says, when I'm in my personal vehicle, I don't let any truck pass me. You want to go 60? I'll do 80. You can do 85? Well, I can go 95. I'm going to point out here, Gabe, you're both speeding at this point, right? Okay. He says, I won't mess around with a fellow trucker, but I'm not going to let you get around me either. See, I just don't get that mentality. Just don't get it. This is part of the problem. If you are a trucker who won't let another one get around you, whether he's going, 5 mile an hour faster than you or 1 mile an hour faster than you, you're part of the problem. Okay. Maybe I'm part of the problem by doing my little tailgating thing here to wake people up. So be it. Anyway, he says, now when I'm in my rig, I'm the driver that lets off the pedal so you can get by. What? I thought you just said you didn't let people by. Oh, okay. I see what okay. You're saying when you're in your truck, you don't have a problem letting people around you. Well, good for you at least. I don't understand why you don't do that in a car. But I mean, if a truck's going to try to pass you or another car is going to try to pass you that fast, for Pete's sake, just let them pass, right? They're going to open up that space you're always talking about. Anyway, he says, FFS, I know what that means, but I'm not going to say it. Use your blinkers and respect my distance from the next vehicle on the road as well. Because for every truck or car that gets in front, I've got to slow and create space to keep me safe. And he sums up by saying TLDR, which honestly, I didn't know what that meant. So I did have to look that up. It means too long didn't read. Basically, it means summing up, which I already said, right? Anyway, he TLDRs. No excuse for tailgating whatsoever. You cannot change my mind unless you can demonstrate your ability to change the laws of physics. Here endeth the lesson. Well, thank you for the lesson, Gabe. I appreciate you writing in. I don't agree with you on all things, and I see so much hypocrisy in this that it's not even funny. You're speeding to not let people around. That's aggressive, but you have some particular thing with tailgating. So, not sure. I think if you'll look in the stats, you'll see that most accidents there are far more accidents caused by speeding and excessive speed than there is by tailgating. I want to check that out. Anyway, thanks for writing in, Gabe. I do appreciate your comment. And I also appreciate the fact when you can articulate your thoughts well and not resort to name calling, which really the only name he called me was he said I was very dense, which, well, that's kind of true. So It's okay. Anyway, Gabe, thank you for writing in. Appreciate your thoughts. Next up, we've got an audio comment. What? From Nick Mack. And you know I love my audio comments, right? As my nephew would say, noise. This one is a bit longer than 3 minutes, but hey, I'm going to allow it. Ready, Nick? Go.
Hello, Todd McCann and fellow trucker dumpers. This is Nick Mack checking in. I know it's been a while since I've checked in, but I want to let everybody know that all's well in my world. I have over 2.5 years in now. Time sure does fly by fast when you're having fun, as we're all living the dream, man, here in the trucker world. I was the flatbedder who was training, and I'll tell you, training people is not easy. I had a couple good ones, but the last guy I had was just horrible. Wouldn't listen. He was a horrible driver. I'd tell him, I mean, like even reading the signs, I had to tell him like 6-7 times. And then I'd be testing him, you know, as we're going down the road. What did that sign say? He said, oh, I couldn't see it. I was like, what do you mean? You got to be able to see it. It was just a horrible attitude, a bad driver, wouldn't learn. And I thought he was going to be the death of me. I couldn't even sleep at night, you know, so, and I actually wanted to get him off the truck.
Hey, Nick, let me jump in here just for a second, because this is really the primary reason why I never wanted to be a trainer, is because I just couldn't picture trying to sleep while somebody else is driving the truck. It was hard enough. Well, it wasn't hard to trust the evil overlord because she was an excellent driver. I'm married to her, for Pete's sake. I better trust her. But boy, some random person who just came out of God knows what kind of driving school. We've heard the horror stories, you know, how awful these schools are sometimes. And I'm supposed to just put my life in their hands. Ugh. I don't know. Maybe if it was one of those training programs, like I'm a mentor now at my current company, where if a new person comes in, I show them the ropes of the company, but I'm not teaching them to drive. They're already experienced drivers. That's the part that's scary. And I am sitting up the whole time in the passenger seat, largely because I have no sleeper berth. But anyway, all right, let's get back. Sorry, Nick, for the interruption.
But he knew where I parked in my truck, and he was from the south side of Chicago. I was afraid he'd get a hit done on me because he knows some pretty bad people over there on the south side. Wow. Anyway, I worked with him and I got him through, and I'm glad to report that he is a good driver now, and he is still working, driving, and he's got a couple kids, and he's doing it to help his family and his wife go to college and stuff.
Awesome.
So he has good intentions. He was just one of those people that didn't listen well and had a real hard time learning, and he wasn't a very good driver, and it was the hardest 3 weeks of my life. After that, they wanted to give me another student, and that was when COVID hit. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. All the restaurants are closed. You can't go into anywhere. And that was my way to get away from the trainees I had.
Right.
Would go sit in and have a meal and read in the restaurant and stuff. So you couldn't do that. So I'd be stuck with them for, you know, indefinite amounts of time.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided to take a break. And while I took a break, I found a really good job, a good paying job for a private fleet hauling beef. And it's the reefer world, but I'm happy here, and they pay really well. So I'm sticking with this reefer job for a while, and I don't have to train, because training is not easy. I just wanted to touch base on the CDL school and minimum hours.
Okay.
They don't have a minimum hours because of the farm workers and people that have, you know, rode with their dad for 4 years. You can't force them to go to a school. So if they learn what they need to do, they can walk in and test out and take the drive test. And a lot of them drive better than any of us graduating from the CDL school. So I don't think they will ever have minimum hours, because a lot of people get experience and you can't force them to go to school.
Let me break in here for a second again, Nick. Actually, you kind of can. There are a lot of companies nowadays, not so much the mom and pop places, but the large carriers, that they will not take you if you do not have experience from a accredited school. They won't let you even have the opportunity to test out. That's just the way it is. I think they do it because of insurance reasons. I'm not exactly sure. I guess just big company guidelines. But, you know, if you are wanting to, get in using the experience you've gained on the farm or whatever, you may have to go to a small carrier instead of going to one of the big ones, which is fine. Maybe what you prefer anyway, if you're used to driving farm trucks. But anyway, just thought I would jump in there. By all means, please continue.
But I know in Illinois, if you do go to school, they have a minimum of 160-hour class. And that's with classroom training. And then you need to have like 20 hours of skills, backing, parallel parking. And then I think it's 20 hours of behind the wheel and then at least 20 hours of observing. So when I went to school, like going on 3 years ago, they conned me into doing the 200-hour class, which included your hazmat. It was $2,000 for a 160-hour class, $3,000 for a 200-hour class, which included your hazmat. And for all the endorsements, it was over $4,000. I didn't know that I should have done the 160-hour class for $2,000 because I didn't learn anything extra. I just got stuck in the classroom a lot longer with a bunch of grown kids that acted ridiculous and wouldn't listen. And to go in and actually test for the hazmat, it's like $5, and then you get the endorsement. So anybody thinking of going to school, I would just do the minimum 160, get the app to get your endorsements, go through the tests and test out of it on your own. Because between the 160-hour class, the 200-hour class, no difference. It's just you're forced to sit in the classroom with a bunch of grown kids longer. And then they had so many people, the students, the class was overpacked, so many people that I didn't even get enough drive time. So I had to go for like 220, 230 hours. It took a whole extra week for me to get my CDL because they had so many students that I couldn't get enough behind the wheel time.
Right.
So that's my 2 cents on your getting your CDL license is do the minimum class, just the CDL, straight up CDL, and then study for the hazmat and endorsements, and then just go in and take the tests on your own. Save the thousands of dollars because they kind of shystered me out of an extra $1,000, and then I regretted it because I had to sit in and listen with a bunch of grown-up kids. And I wish I would have just done the 160-hour straight-up CDL class for $2,000 in Illinois. I went to Progressive Truck Driving School. So anyway, that's an update on me. I hope everybody out there is driving safe. Protect your CDL and have a super fantastic day if you can.
Well, Nick, according to what you're saying about Illinois here, it sounds like that there are maybe states can make their own specific rules as to how, many hours you have to complete your CDL training. Like we know from C. Lopez in episode 147, was it? 148? Anyway, there'll be a link in the show notes. We know for a fact that there was no limit on his. If he could have gone in there, and got his license in, 5 hours, they would have let him do that. So, like I said, this must be a state-specific rule. Anyway, Nick, thanks for letting us know what's up with you. Thanks for your input on the truck driving schools. Good information there. And it's good to hear your voice again. It's been a while since we heard about your little incident in the truck stop there. Sorry to bring that up, but that's a little painful reminder. Glad I can help. All right, last up, this one is going to require your help again. Now, this was a student from Carnegie Mellon University reached out to me. His name is Anirudh Mohan. I think I got that name right. Very nice guy. And he is doing a study on the effects of autonomous trucks on the trucking industry from the perception of truck drivers. That's the important part of that. And we had a decent conversation. It was probably, maybe 30, 45 minutes long, something like that. Great conversation. He's very open to what you have to say, very curious, asks lots of good questions, and he is looking for anyone interested in participating in this. There's no compensation or anything like that, except for that you will get to weigh in on what your thoughts are on autonomous trucks in this industry. So, if you would like to do this, check him out. I got the email and his phone number in the link in the show notes, and you can text him to schedule an interview, or you can email him. Again, that is Anirudh. That's spelled weird, so let me spell that out for you. ANIRUDDH @cmu.edu. Best just to go to the show notes and click on that. Or, like I said, you can leave him a text message and schedule that. He wants to get his hands on as many people, or his ears, I guess, on as many truckers as possible. So make your voice be heard. I told him that Trucker Dump listeners are awesome, and at least some of you would be reaching out to him. So you listening right now, you be the one. Go do it. Some of the people in the Slack group have already done it. I don't know if anybody from the Facebook group has done it, but I listed it both in there. I know at least one person has done it in the Slack group, but I expect more. Come on, you can do this. Help this guy out. He's a student doing a study about trucking. What more do you need? Well, that about wraps this one up. I guess I need to just put a sock in it and end it before I lose my voice. Hopefully I will feel better soon. Let's give out a shout to those who wrote in. I appreciate it. We talked to Trevor, who goes by Kool-Aid in the Slack group. We talked to Todd R., who goes by Road Toad in the Slack group. Talked to Stevie, Gabe, and we talked to Nick Mack, who goes by the name of Nick Mack in the Trucker Dump Slack group. If you'd like to join that group, it's pretty easy. Just email me at truckerdump@gmail.com and ask to join the group or join the Facebook groups. All of my contact information is available at abouttruckdriving.com. Or, of course, in the show notes. You knew that was coming, right? As always, I'd like to thank Volvo Trucks and Pilot Flying J for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump. You guys rock. In closing, I'd like to quote the immortal words of Nick Mack when he said, "Have a super fantastic day." Well, I know we didn't have a main topic today, but I'm sure I said at least one, probably more, stupid things that can be picked apart, ridiculed, or scrutinized. If you'd like to share your thoughts, please put them in an email or a voice memo app and send them off to truckerdump@gmail.com. You can find all the other things I do, including both my books and 149 other podcasts, at abouttruckdriving.com. But hey, I always advise a good podcasting app if you prefer listening to reading. Apple Podcast is already on your iPhone, and Google Podcast is free for all Android users. As always, I appreciate you listening and putting up with my weird release schedule. So until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way. Let me remind you of an excellent podcast episode we had back in January of 2007. 2007, that's not right. Like I say, sales did pick up for a little bit there. So if for instance, we all know about the new split sleeper berth. Things like that they are expecting. The industry is expecting record set. Let's put it this way. No, let's put it what way? Say it clearly, Todd, for Pete's sake. Idiot. Now, this is not a coherent sentence. Wow. I know these elog things are becoming an unavoidable. I'm the driver that lets off the pedal so you can get by. What? Damn it. You're killing me, Smalls.
My job.
Uh-huh.